This World War II half-track is a memorial to the men who served, fought, and died with Company C of the 194th Tank Battalion. Over the course of World War II, the city of Salinas lost more men on average than any other town of its size in America. Back in 1941, 105 men marched through the streets of Salinas. By the end of the war in 1945, only 47 men returned. One of the men who did come back was Roy Diaz, who survived not only the infamous Bataan Death March, but more than 3 years of brutal treatment by the hands of the Imperial Japanese Army as a prisoner of war.
Oh God, what a mess. The way I got it, it was a guy walking pretty fast, coming from the rear. I said, what the heck's all that shooting and everything? He said, for Christ's sake, he said, don't go down there because if you fall down, you're not going to get up no more. They're piling people up. He said they either shoot them or cut their heads off. And that's the way it went. So I went, followed him up to the head of the line and headed the rest of them. But that was a mess. God.
Roy Diaz is a retired 96-year-old farmer, but his story is as compelling as any novel or film you could ever imagine. The fact that he even survived the inhumane treatment by his Japanese guards during the Bataan Death March at the very beginning of World War II was just the first of several miracles.
We didn't know it was coming off until they gave the orders to march out of there. We went up a gun darn hill up there, and geez, we look at there, there's a dead guy over here, another dead guy over here, you know. Phew. And finally made it up the top. Then we started on the death march. We walked and walked and walked, and I never had nothing to eat for 10 days. Had water. I got smart. I said, I could have water, I'll live.
Diaz grew up on the family farm in the hills above Salinas. His Portuguese grandfather had been a stowaway on an English whaling ship, and he worked as a whaler in the 1850s up and down the California coast. When his grandfather had saved enough money, he jumped ship in Monterey Bay, headed inland, and bought more than 400 acres that would eventually become the Diaz farm. Diaz's father grew potatoes, and it was a difficult life. When Roy was born in 1914, he was destined to live that life on the farm. During the Great Depression, to earn a little extra money, Roy joined the National Guard. Young men from Salinas and the Pajaro Valley all served together in peacetime in Company C of the 194th Tank Battalion. With war clouds with Japan and Germany on the horizon in 1941, Company C was given a big parade in downtown Salinas, and then the unit was shipped off to the Philippines, where they never expected to see any combat. However, their lives were soon overtaken by history.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Within 2 months, the Imperial Japanese military had swept over the entire Pacific. Out of rations, outgunned, and outnumbered, the U.S. Army was ordered to surrender in the Philippines. The Americans and the Filipinos were forced to march in searing jungle heat without water, food, or medicine for nearly a week. If they fell behind or stopped from exhaustion, they were shot, knifed, clubbed to death, their throats cut, or decapitated. It's estimated that anywhere from 6,000 to 11,000 men died during the forced march to the first prison camp.
I never seen so many dead people in my life. They were all along the whole route, 65 miles of it, dead people.
The survivors managed to make it to Camp O'Donnell. There was some water, but little food, and death could come at any time.
I'm the third with my canteen, you know, and all of a sudden this Jap guard, he gets up here, I see the damn bayonet going right between this guy here, they come out the other side. Yeah, bloop, I don't know what he did it for. You didn't know what the heck was going to happen 1 minute to the other there.
While other men died from disease, beating, starvation, or just gave up living, Diaz somehow managed to endure. He saw his friends die, his weight dropped to less than 90 pounds, and he was sent off to several other prison camps, but he still managed to hang on and maintain his will to live.
Well, it's hard to describe. It's hard.
MacArthur has fulfilled his promise tenfold.
As the U.S. Navy and Army, led by General Douglas MacArthur, began recapturing territory in the Pacific, island by island, Diaz and other POWs were eventually shipped to Japan as slave laborers in a shipyard. Once more, Diaz managed to stay alive. When atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, Japan suddenly surrendered, and Diaz's guards fled. It would take another week until the POWs would learn that the war was finally over, and they were liberated. The men responsible for the treatment of the American prisoners were tried as war criminals, and a number of them were executed for war crimes. The war officially ended when the Japanese military surrendered aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay on September 2nd, 1945.
We are gathered here to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored.
They eventually held another parade in the streets of Salinas when the 47 survivors of Company C made their way back home. Diaz returned to his farm, and he would struggle for years to put the past behind him. He eventually met a lovely hometown girl named Lorraine at the Salinas Rodeo, and they've been married for over 50 years. He still remembers the men he served with, but their ghosts sometimes drift away on the wind. Today, Roy Diaz grows a few grapes, and he has found peace once more on his hillside of his Salinas farm.